Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals. I'm Randall Carlisle. Rachel Santizo is not across the table because she is still under the weather. So, Rachel, if you are watching, we hope you feel better. This is a podcast aimed at just examining in a honest and raw fashion what happens with addiction and recovery, and hopefully providing hope to people who are still struggling or who have loved ones who are struggling. Our guest today is Roger Goeckeritz. Got that right?
Yep.
I pronounced it right.
Thank you.
It strikes me, and I'm not being negative toward you at all, but an awful lot of our guests talk about being homeless and growing up in a poor environment and everything, and that is not the case with you. And I want to hear how you grew up and what you've done. But the point is, I think there's a stigma about people suffering from addiction or alcoholism or whatever, that it's people living in poverty or people out on the street or people on the poor side of town. You grew up in Park City.
Yeah.
Describe that.
I mean, I grew up actually in the Salt Lake, but then spent most of my life in Park City in my adult years. And my family, my parents are both European, migrated to Utah. I grew up LDS, conservative, upper middle class, had everything kind of provided for me as far as like education and money and traveling and a lot of that. And then, as I had mentioned to you, I went even on an LDS mission and kind of, not that I'm any better than anyone, but it's like I had a good like moral compass and values from my family and knowing kind of like right or wrong. And then somewhere along the line after my mission, life just took a turn. I started hanging out with the wrong people. I was up in Park City, going to bars, parties. Some of that was work related. And
we may have run into each other in bars up there. And it really is it's easy to be in a party scene up there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Without any judgment on you, right?
Correct. And that was a lot of like my problem was just like everything to me was like normalized, and like I had a good job. I, had good education, came from a decent family. So it's like, to me, I didn't have a problem. Like I can go to drink and go party a little bit, and Monday morning I'm back at work. And it's like, that seemed okay for about 10 years until alcohol led to a lot of legal issues and problems in my life. And
like DUIs?
Yeah, I got 2 DUIs that are on my record, one that got dismissed. I ended up getting other charges for driving on a suspended license, possession of paraphernalia, marijuana. A lot of just, I wouldn't say petty things, but a lot of little things that just added up very quickly in a short period of time. And that's...
Did the cops know you? Oh, it's Roger again?
Yeah. And the sad thing is, and I don't like say this to pat myself on the back or be negative towards anyone either, but they knew me so well in Park City that there were even times they like let me go or like get home safe and walk. And so that also helped me feel like, well, I don't really have a problem, or I can justify drinking and staying out late because I'm probably not going to get arrested. And then that only lasted so long. And next thing you know, I mean, not every weekend, but it's like fairly regular for about 2 years. I was being pulled over or questioned, or do you have alcohol in your vehicle, or, that sort of thing. And
you become a target after a while when they're aware of you. Yeah. And the funny thing about what you were saying, I've been married and divorced 4 times. And each of my wives kept saying, "You're an alcoholic." And I said, "No, I just drink a lot and I enjoy it, and I don't have a problem." Right?
That's exactly where I was.
Why is it so hard? Like the first time I went to a 12-step meeting, I said, first time I shared, I said, "I'm Randall, and it was so hard for me to say the word alcoholic.
Yeah, I can relate to that too.
Why is that so hard? Because I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's with like any substances, like one, we're all in denial and you don't want to admit that like you have a problem. And up until I feel like more recently, like having a problem with like substance use or alcohol, there was such a stigma on it that like you didn't want people to know it. Like, people wouldn't hire you. You shouldn't be driving a car, like a lot of stigma that goes with like,
You're not reliable.
yeah. So it's like the shame and guilt, I think, is the biggest thing for me, or maybe any person in recovery or that's still addicted, is the things that society places on us to feel like, you should be ashamed or you should feel guilty about, if you have a problem with drinking. And, everyone around you, at least with alcohol, can go to the bar and go home and not get DUIs, and they take cabs. And I couldn't do that. I, unfortunately, a couple of years into my drinking, if I opened a bottle, I was drinking it most likely alone until I passed out at home. And the next day, somewhere along the line at work, I would find a way to drink at lunch, or, as soon as I got home, vodka, whiskey, whatever it was. And it's like, that was a sad way that I lived my life for so many years. And I lived it privately, that not too many people, including my family, coworkers, even knew that that's how heavily I was drinking.
Isolation.
Yeah. And so I wasn't, it started out like maybe partying and having a good time, and alcohol made me feel great and self-confidence. And then it led to, again, the shame and the guilt. And for a good 5 years, I drank alone. I cried. I was sad. I was lonely. I had no friends. I'd burned bridges, struggling with legal issues, financial issues, divorce, just, you name it, it happened to me. And instead of being vocal about it and asking for help, I was like silently suffering, to the point of like the thoughts had crossed my mind of like suicide. Like
Really?
that was where I thought I was at almost 10 years ago, is like, the only way out of this is to maybe just end it. And I never had a plan. I never really had those thoughts, but there were days where it's like, why can't I just get killed in a car accident and end it? Or, just really sad kind of thoughts. So
People don't realize it because it seems like if you're out in public at a bar and you're yuck and having fun and everything, they say, "Oh, he's a happy-go-lucky guy." But I went through the same things. I'd black out frequently when I drank, and deep down inside, I was depressed and lonely and felt, but on the outside, it doesn't look that way.
no, and that's just it. Like I was, as you said, going to parties or going to bars, and from the outside, even to my family and close friends at the time, and those friends I learned were not really friends either, but I appeared to be happy. Like I seemed to have my life together, my finances together, living in a decent place, driving a decent car. I was smiling and happy. And the reality is that's far from how I was feeling. And the only way I could like feel any better at the time was to drink.
Sure.
And that was just to escape and numb, and all the, common reasons people drink later on when it becomes a problem.
And you were very successful educationally too.
Yeah. And even like my career, like not, like the greatest career, but it's like I somehow kept full-time jobs that paid pretty well. And even was going to work, I wouldn't say drunk, but like hungover, and not the ideal employee, but I never let someone down in regards to, if you asked me to do something, I was probably going to do it. So, and part of that was maybe I was just trying to save face so that you wouldn't discover that I was really struggling with alcohol and other substances, and my life was a mess.
And you graduated from the U.
Correct.
With what kind of?
So I went to the U, got a bachelor's in mass communication, and then ended up going on to Westminster College and finished that degree in pursuing English and creative writing. So, and then I'm now currently, career change or like midlife crisis, but a couple of years ago, I decided to go back to school to be a clinical mental health counselor. And I'm about 6 months away from doing that, so that I can help other people now. Wow.
What, and I guess you should share the fact, because I don't remember when I ran into Roger. I was a TV anchor for about 40 years. And my longest stop was the ABC affiliate in Salt Lake City. And you were there when I was there as the main anchor, and you were an intern?
Yeah, I was an intern for like 3 months one summer.
On the assignment desk.
Yeah, assignment desk, and went out with a few reporters, and probably wasn't very good or reliable, but like I enjoyed that time. And I do remember meeting you. And then it's kind of like, I wouldn't say ironic, but life 20 years later,
Yeah.
we're sitting here together working for Odyssey House. So I think it's great.
Now, were you in your addiction back when you were
No,
young?
like that was, I mean, at that point, I'd probably started drinking a little and going to the bars, but I was maybe like 22 or 23, just got home from a mission, dating a girl, and for the most part, I think living my life decent. It wasn't until my late 20s that my addiction really started to hit me. So I was about 28 when I started to heavily drink.
And you said, we were laughing about it before we started taping this, that the environment, like working in a TV station or that whole industry, is rather conducive to drinking too much or drugging too much.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the like, parties or after parties or Sundance or whatever things might have been going on, I seemed to feel the need to always be a part of that. And I think part of that was because it was an excuse to drink and be an idiot and get drunk, and that was okay. But that was like my actual normal life for a long time. And I used settings like what you just mentioned as, I think, a reason to drink and be accepted. But I didn't feel that way a lot of the time I was drinking, like, so.
Well, you mentioned some other things, Sundance or rock and roll or something.
Yeah, so I worked on a few television things and moved out to LA for a while. I did some work with Sundance Film Festival and their press department, and had a career like that. I was hoping, to pursue more of that in the writing and, be a famous author or something someday. And unfortunately, as with any, addiction, I think I limited myself early on in my career by the problems that I started to have and burning bridges and just not being reliable with myself. So it's like all the great writing that I thought I was maybe doing never ended up going anywhere because I never finished it or never got around to finding the publisher or sending it to my agent or whatever might have happened, and just kind of like shot myself in the foot. And so from there, I ended up, for a long time, I went into construction and dealt with, more of that industry. And that too was another work environment where like drinking and smoking and whatever was okay when you're on the, not on the job site, but after work, let's go grab a beer. So it's like I spent a good 20 years of my life surrounded in an environment where, it was kind of conducive to that. And I feel like, not to go on a tangent, but like, alcohol, and even with like the legalization of marijuana and all these things, like they're great for a lot of people that can handle those things responsibly. But when you put substances like that in the hands of people that are addicts like myself, it makes it very hard to where it's like, I can legally go, purchase marijuana or buy liquor or cigarettes or whatever it is. But those are actually very addictive substances to someone like myself. So.
Yeah, it's for those of you who can't relate to that, we all, and I go back to the AA Big Book sometimes, that it's every single alcoholic, no matter where you go to any 12-step meeting anywhere, and part of the book says we all yearn to drink like normal people. Yeah. And what that means is the ability to go out to dinner and have one or two glasses of wine, or go to a bar and have one or two drinks, as opposed to 30 or 40 and going home totally blotto.
Yeah. For me, that wasn't a thing. And speaking of like AA, so I don't remember the exact year and everything, but I remember the moment. It was on Valentine's when I first went to AA. So that's coming up on my like sober anniversary. I had the clear impression to go to an AA meeting, and up to that point, I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't even know what it was.
Same here.
As you mentioned, like my first night going there, it's like, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't know who these people are. And I definitely
all a bunch of drunks, not me.
Yeah. And for the longest like time, so I started going regular from Valentine's Day on, but for my first like 3 months of AA, I didn't feel I needed to be there. I felt I had a chip on the shoulder. I felt I was better than everyone, yada, yada, yada. But my sponsor made me come, and he made me also call him every single day at 3 o'clock. And that got really old really quick. But then slowly over time, I started to realize, like, one, I think the greatest thing for me is like, I found my own higher power, which started to put meaning and purpose into my life. I started to enjoy the meetings. I started to enjoy my sponsor. And now I still, almost 10 years later, continue to still go when I can to AA. And I find it so refreshing now. And it's like to look at that night and day attitude that I had. I don't know what really changed, but it's like, it's an amazing program, just like Odyssey and other, things throughout the Valley.
And you ended up going to Odyssey.
I did. Yeah. Several years ago, I ended up still realizing I had some problems, needing some coping skills, some maintenance. A lot of it for me when I went to Odyssey, I did their outpatient program, was I still needed help dealing with like grief and loss, shame and guilt, and self-esteem. And Odyssey is where I found that hope. And I actually just did a Google search for treatment, and Odyssey happened to accept my insurance. So there was no cost to me at the time. And miraculously at the time, there supposedly was a wait list to get into outpatient. And I remember it was roughly like January 4th that I applied for the program. And I believe around January 10th, so like within a week, I got a phone call that like there was a spot open. Can you start on Friday? So like things in my life with like AA, Odyssey, all that, it's like my higher power, whatever, just started to put things into place as to like, this is the path for your new life. And it wasn't easy. Even when I was going to Odysseys, a few years into my sobriety, I still kind of wasn't convinced that I was sober, drunk, but I wasn't drinking, using, or partying anymore, but I still was so lonely. Mm-hmm. And there was a void still in my life. I still wasn't sure if I was really, an alcoholic. Like maybe at some point I could go back to a drink. But then through Odyssey and the program, it made me realize like, yeah, this is like where I belong, and this is the path I need. And that was a huge pivotal turning point in my life, the Odyssey outpatient program, to start helping gear my life to, being more honest, being more reliable, getting more involved in like the recovery world. And then, as I said, it led to me, going back to school and now wanting to be a counselor myself. So
what do you want to do with your future? Is that it?
Yeah. So, I'm done with like trying to, maybe someday I'll write a book. I don't know, but it's like, I'm done with the trying to be a celebrity and living that life and being a pretend person. I don't want to do construction anymore. It's just too much for me. But it's like, at this point in my life, I think the revelation to me, my personal just is like counseling, is like, I need to help other people. And that's part of like the AA model, like the 12th step is when you are far enough in your recovery, you start to help others. And that's, how I feel my life is meant to be now, is it's come full circle. I'm out of debt. I'm going to school. I'm in a great, loving, personal relationship with an amazing young lady. I have a great career. I don't make, the money that I would hope to at this point in my life, but it's like
you never will.
Yeah, I never will. And it's like, if I chase that dream, I'll never be satisfied.
Right.
And that's, I think, where the counseling and stuff has come in, is like every day at work at Odyssey, and where this career path leads me, I'm not sure, but it's like, I feel rewarded here. I feel fulfilled here. I can actually connect and relate to people and help others. And at the end of the day, I go home finally feeling good about myself.
And you can sleep at night.
I can. Yeah.
Without booze. Yeah.
Exactly.
You so work refreshing. In our admissions department
Correct.
Right now. And so for those, try to picture we have a large room with a desk, and that's where all of our clients come before they matriculate to an IOP, an intensive outpatient program, or residential, or whatever. What you see, a variety of people coming in every day, don't you?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Describe. Everybody is scared, I think, because I'm down there sometimes talking to people, and And I was scared when I first went into an IOP program. And I'd be scared if I walked into Odyssey and knew that I had a problem.
Yeah.
Do you guys try to allay their fears, or?
Yeah, I mean, we do the best. I think the admissions staff is like really compassionate and caring and shows empathy towards the clients. And we like our whole goal, and I don't know if this is necessarily like Odyssey's mission, but it's like we try to meet the client like where they're at.
Right.
And our clients are either coming from, the streets or shelters, jails or prisons. A small percentage of them come in like self-admit.
Right.
We have adolescents, the age range is from, 16 or 15 on to 80-year-old individuals. So it's like there's no discrimination of like age, race, whatever. But like my experience down there is like we do try to talk to the clients and treat them like humans, meet them where they're at, and then explain to them like what the program is about. And there's a lot of like misconceptions about, treatment or Odyssey, or stigma still about, well, if I go to treatment, then I'm definitely an addict, or, whatever it is that people still think. But, the society and the community are embracing like programs like Odyssey, to where there are so many clients that I have, which, I mean, there are days where it like breaks my heart. I go home and cry, and I have to do some self-care and go to therapy myself so that I don't carry too much of the client's emotions home with me. And then there are days where like I am somewhat triggered by some of what they're sharing because I've been there. And that's hard to like, you got to keep a balance to yourself and not, this is the client's program in recovery and not mine. So you share and disclose what's appropriate when appropriate to help the client where they're at, but it's for the client and to not, like do harm or risk to them. It's their program and their treatment, but we do try to explain it. Like this is the expectations. This, we don't want to set you up for faults,
Right.
anything false or tell you something, promise you something we can't do. And, some are afraid to do it. Some are just there because probation's telling them to. Others, like there are the moments where there are genuinely people that I've had in my office that are so grateful that like Odyssey or the judge or whoever gave them the chance to come here. And whether they end up succeeding the first time or 5 times later, I get to see or hear the whole story of a lot of people. I see a lot of the same people in and out of the door, which is hard,
Sure.
but it's like, hey, they're trying and they're coming back. And then I get to see the successes too and hear about the people that graduate, whether it's through the emails or being invited to their graduation.
Right.
And that's the most rewarding part about the admissions process is like, every day it's chaotic and stressful and this and that and emotional, but then it's like, we're doing this for a purpose and everyone's on the same like path,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. And for me in recovery, I think that's the greatest thing about the recovery is one, I feel like I'm giving back. And two, it's like, it keeps me humble every day to know that like, I came from a good environment. I can give back. I don't need to carry like the shame and guilt anymore. And I very well, I was like this close to being like homeless myself or living in my car, and so it's like, I'm no better than any of our clients.
Right.
And that keeps me humble every day, I think, to help me in my own recovery. So
My problem, and I'm not a therapist, so I only meet our clients peripherally by doing a podcast or speaking to them or something like that. And I know you're not supposed to get personally involved, but there are just some clients that they just seem to click with you, and you have a special feeling for them, and you want to see them succeed.
yeah.
And I find it very hard when I've gotten to know a client who I think is going to just do great things, and I hear they didn't succeed.
Yeah,
And I have
that's
trouble
hard.
dealing with that.
I do as well. Like that's heartbreaking. And I'm not sure, like even maybe the clients that end up not ever coming back, or perhaps, their lives go down a darker path. And that is like heartbreaking. Or for me, it's also like encouraging, when I check like our schedule in the morning at admissions, I get to see the clients' names, maybe several days prior to their coming. And there's
Right.
always names I maybe recognize. And it's like, hey, I'm so happy that this person's
Right.
coming back again and that they're still alive and they still care and they're still trying. But it's like any program out there like Odyssey, it's an emotional thing. And I know, as I enter into like the counseling path, it's hard to like not want to disclose and share and get personal with the client, because that's now, as I enter in that field, I need to maintain like ethical standards. Sure. But there are days, as you just mentioned, that where I go home with a heavy heart for a certain client, or I've really connected to a client and whether they succeed or fail, I have to keep some of that joy or disappointment inside so that I can be there for like myself, my family, and the next client.
The flip side is when you do go to a graduation and you see people succeed, or they come back and work for Odyssey, or you see them go on to do big things in the world, that's the big payback for doing the job that we do.
Definitely. It's amazing.
Just, so can you answer the question now? Are you an alcoholic?
I definitely am an alcoholic, but I'm
also, you can say that.
Yeah, right? I'm also proud to say that like I'm an alcoholic that's not being like stupid anymore and found like a better path.
I always say I'm in an alcoholic in long-term recovery.
Yeah.
And you and I almost have the same amount of time, 10 years. Are you still tempted to drink?
No, like the amazing thing about that is my first few years in recovery, the thought crossed my mind. And a lot of that was because I was very lonely, and I disengaged from everything from my past and social media and a lot of that stuff so that I could stay sober. So I spent a good like 2 years of my recovery kind of lonely. So there were always thoughts and temptations of like calling a friend back or going on Facebook or doing something, but I never did. And now, this many years later, the thought is just no longer there. Like you could offer me whatever it is, set alcohol or whatever on the table, and I would tell you no, and that wouldn't even be a question. Like there's nothing that would get me to go back to that ever again, and there's no temptation left in my body about that.
I think about it occasionally, very occasionally, but I always play the tape and I think, okay, this is the way my life was when I was deeply involved in drinking, and this is the way my life is now, and I like the way my life is now a lot better.
And I think that's what keeps me from having those thoughts, is like my life right now is so great compared to what it was, that I think that's why I'm not even tempted, because I know that the minute I stepped into a bar or went to a barbecue where there was alcohol or something, this great life that I have would end. And like, this is the best my life's ever been. So
you're never going to be a star or rock and roll or.
But that's not what life is. I've come to find out. It's like finding purpose and meaning in your life and helping people along the way. So
good luck in your future.
Yeah, thank
you. I think you'll do great things for a lot of people. Thank you, Roger, for being our guest today. Rachel, we'd like to have you back sometime. I'm just sort of imagining she's there. And thank you for watching or listening to another edition of Odyssey House Journals.